ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause and let us enjoy, sit back and enjoy this conversation. Murali sir, over to you.
Thank you, Chinmay. Fantastic introduction. And Abhilasha, I will keep it to 30 minutes as you requested me to. Good afternoon, everyone. Ananth, because you said TiE's official language is Telugu, I do want to start with a Telugu poem. కార్యం చేసే సింహసిక్తు చైతన్యం సాగరమును కదిలించే అలల ప్రతాపం గగనమును అధిగమించే పట్టుదల మనసును మెరిపించే ఆశయ సంకల్పం అవనిపై అడుగు పెట్టగల భవిష్యత్ నేడు మనతోనే మొదలవుతుంది. That basically means the courage of a lion that accomplishes, the might of waves that stir the ocean, the determination that conquers the sky, the aspirations that brighten the mind, a future that leaves its mark on this earth begins with us today. So it is the founder's mindset which begins with us today. So, Kirthiga and Ananth, I've known you for a long time. I met you a few years ago. Very, very, affable individuals. It's my privilege to moderate this session.
Thank you.
But before we get into the crux of what the mindset is, I want our audience to know who is Kirthiga personally, right? Can you please share a couple of minutes on where you're born, what's the family life, right? Kids. What do you do on a Sunday morning?
Well, those were a lot of questions. And I'll first say it is so exciting to be back in Bengaluru. This is where I was when I interviewed for the Facebook India role. This is where I was when I raised my hand to be the chapter chair for Stanford Business School, which eventually led me to become the chair of the Stanford Business School Management Board. And this is where I have deep friendships. People who have met during that time here, who have invested in my company, who I have invested in their companies. So very, very excited to be back in Bangalore for TiE Global Summit. On your question of childhood, born in Pune, for those coming from that part of the country, grew up mostly in Maharashtra. My father moved every 3 years, was not in the army, not in the military, was with the same company, Lloyd Steel, for 30 years. My mother thinks he has a travel bug, and my husband thinks I've inherited the travel bug. But from that came lessons of adaptability that I think are very critical when it comes to the founder's mindset. And as someone said, it makes for brutal childhoods perhaps, but very adaptable adults. And it teaches you to make the most of every situation. I remember I went to university. I did my engineering undergrad in Nanded. And my parents were of the mindset that if there was an engineering college in the neighborhood, that is where their girl child would go to. And when I wept and said, oh, but why can't I apply to other highly rated school? My father said, Kirthiga, you can go to a great school and do nothing with that opportunity, or you can make the most of what you have. Again, a mindset that has been key to me. And just to finish that story, when I then stood second in the university, which by the way, I was the most surprised when that happened. But it was then including those universities that I did not apply to. So it was my father's message coming to me. So he's played a big role. My mother has played a big role. My husband has been an incredible champion through the years. When I was thinking about, do I do my MBA or not? I was doing really well in my career. And it was my husband, Dave, who said, Kirthiga, you're thinking so much about this. It is better to look back and regret having done something than look back and regret not having done something. And that was what pushed me to the edge. 2 beautiful girls who keep me grounded, keep me in touch with the latest technology, and also instrumental to who I am.
Kids always do that. Ananth, what about you? What's your family life? Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
Yeah. No, firstly, by the way, again, just to repeat, I think thank you for having me. It's always great to come to TiE, and this is TiE Global, so thank you for having me.
Second global summit for you.
Second global summit for me, and they're always exciting, so thank you again. I grew up in Chennai. I grew up in I think a fairly classic, what's called a Tambram household. Everybody in my house is a professional. My dad used to work for a auto company, so I always wanted to be in automotive. So he used to work at a company which is now no more, called Hindustan Motors, so ambassadors and Contessas and so on. So grew up in Chennai, did engineering. So, you know, it was the classic engineering that I went to grad school. So I did engineering in Madras University. Then I went to Michigan, Ann Arbor. My dad, I think, still has a lot of influence on me. He was one of the most, I would say, I think he eventually retired as the CEO of Hindustan Motors, which at that time was a large role, but he never brought it home. He was always quite simple, always very approachable, and I think it played a big role in my life just around, you know, just humility and just sort of saying, don't take life too seriously, you just live your life, right? And then I did the very boring classic thing. I joined McKinsey as a business analyst, saying I will do automotive. I always said I would want to do real automotive work, so I said I'll do 2 years of McKinsey and then leave, and then go to business school and do an automotive, go to an automotive company and be a designer. I stayed in McKinsey for 15 years.
Wow. You don't look that old.
No, I didn't. Thank you, but I did stay for 15 years. I was in China for 3, which was fascinating. I was in China between 2002 and 2005. Which is among the most exciting times because you saw Chinese companies go global very, very quickly and become at scale. You know, I don't know if you remember, but Lenovo bought IBM's PC division then. It was the first major cross-border acquisition that actually happened. So anyway, long story short, I spent 15 years in McKinsey. I came back to India in 2009 to start the Chennai office. I'm from Chennai, to start the Chennai office for McKinsey. And it was also the auto hub. So I thought I'd do that. And then I met these 2 entrepreneurs, Sachin and Binny, you know, at some event. And I got talking, and I was leading the South office for McKinsey, so I thought we could do something interesting with them. They seemed quite ambitious and wanting to change retail. One thing led to another. I spent a day with them. They said, why don't you come? We just bought a new company called Myntra. You know, can you do something there, right? So I thought it was about McKinsey, and instead I ended up running it, which I think was an interesting decision because I was an automotive product development supply chain consultant and went and did fashion e-commerce with Myntra. It was the best decision I made. So luck, for all aspiring entrepreneurs, luck plays probably the most massive role in anything. So did that for 4 years, business really did well. The Walmart sale happened. Thought I would be more entrepreneurial, so did that, etc. Anyway, but coming back to the personal side of it, just to conclude this, I have 3 beautiful daughters. My wife is actually an entrepreneur, and I think for any entrepreneur without a supportive spouse or partner, it's impossible, right? And I think that sort of made a large difference.
No, this is fantastic. So I do want to pick up from where you left off, Ananth, is that you had a professional life where you did McKinsey, and I really enjoyed how you casually dropped I just got hired by McKinsey. It's not very easy to get hired by McKinsey, right? So you had a professional life, then went into sort of professional with Myntra, then you had an entrepreneurial thing with MedLife, then now you are doing your Mensa.
Yep.
What's the transition? What's the challenges?
Yeah.
What's your mindset changes or mindset shifts that happen in these 4 different milestones?
Yeah, so maybe I think I'll tell you, even though they're so separate from each other and so different, I'll tell you the things that are a constant and then maybe some of the things that are different. The constant, actually, McKinsey provides you a great foundation for 2 things. One is solving a new problem, and the other is getting along with people, because you know you have to influence people to get anything done as a consultant. And I think those 2 actually have been a constant. It doesn't matter whether you're the CEO or founder, you still need a very engaged and excited team to actually make stuff happen. So I think people and influencing people has been important. And learning new skills. I think learnability and curiosity, I think, is key to founders' mindset, which we'll maybe talk about a little bit later. And I think that's been a constant for me across. I think what changes is also interesting. McKinsey is full of insecure overachievers. You don't have to actually do too much leadership. I mean, it's a small focused team that you have to manage. I think the minute you get into 2,000 people, 4,000 people, it just starts to change how you lead, and I think that's been a learning. And the last, perhaps, is risk appetite, right? I think, unlike many entrepreneurs here, I was chatting with a bunch of people. I just met a 9th grader who has 2 startups, has written a book, and I think a few other things, right? Whereas I think I did this at like in my 40s, right? And it's just interesting because your risk appetite also changes dramatically, because if you have sort of done it for a little bit, then your ability to take risk becomes greater. And I think that's been very helpful for me.
That's fantastic. So, Kirthiga, your journey has been quite interesting, right? You're in US, came back to India as the first employee of Facebook. I'm quite proud of the fact that you're a fellow Telugu, fellow Hyderabadi. You set up the Facebook, first
I
Facebook.
can't do poems like you.
I know, but it's
No
difficult.
one can.
No, that's what Vani was saying. Don't get influenced by Vani. So yeah, and then you went into SoftBank, deployed over $1 billion. Then now you are an entrepreneur. You're doing virtualness, right? What's the shift from your perspective? What made you make those changes, and how has that impacted you?
Yeah, I'll actually pick up from what Ananth said, in that there are a lot of things that are constant. And in my case, as I think about what's been constant across these transitions, one is just understanding the power of a big, bold vision. It is so important, whether you are at Facebook as a first employee and trying to visualize where this can go. I remember we got the whole team together and we did a bunch of visioning exercise, which went all through 6 months. And then we came up with a vision of 100, 100, 100, where our vision was about having 100 million people on the platform, 100 million in revenue, and 100 million people that we touch through our community efforts. At this time, by the way, we didn't even have 100 million people on the internet in India. This was a time when if we asked people in user research, are you on the internet? They would say no. Are you on Facebook? They would say yes, right? And so, so it was a pretty big BHAG of all sorts, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that is a constant through the transitions. In my investing side, that's what I looked for in my founders that I invested in. And as I'm doing virtualness, our Verix platform is looking to be the industry standard for verification in this age of AI and answer the question, is this real? So if you're in the skilling space, training, if you're a membership organization, all of you, by the way, would have received certificates from TGS that you're attending, participants, speakers. And by the way, please feel free to share it. There are special awards for people who share that. So anytime that you have the need for answering the question, is this real? So the need for a big, bold vision is really important. That's one. Two is, as much as I talk about big, bold vision and scale, also thinking of the power of one. And the power of one manifests itself in different ways. Is there a customer that you're satisfying that will go tell 5 other people? Is there a sponsor who will believe in you early on? I remember an early conversation with Samir Srivastava from Procter & Gamble, who said, hey, can you help us reach tier 2 and tier 3 of India? And we actually developed products with our emerging markets team to do that. So whether it's the power of a big, bold vision, the power of one, as well as the power of people. At the end of the day, it all comes to people. Hire the right people, build the right culture, set the right vision, business results are a byproduct. These are all constants.
But did the Facebook experience helped you being the entrepreneur which you are today in the virtualness?
All of these aspects are very true, and I've learned a lot in that Facebook journey.
Yep.
Whether it is about, we had to do a lot of 0 to 1 thinking with the Facebook days. The first use case was working with a telco where we were helping them reach customers for doing a data top-up, right? This wasn't a use case that existed anywhere in the world, and since then was used by a lot of emerging markets. So a lot of that 0 to 1 thinking was very true. Hiring, people think, remember this was early days of Facebook. I used to have my closing calls with parents of people who were interviewing because they asked me, what is Facebook? Isn't that a site that people go and hang out? My child has an offer from a big IT services company or, and all amazing companies. But those were the conversations that I needed to have to convince them about the vision. And I do a lot of that selling now as well from a vision perspective. Of course, some of the dynamics change. The risk appetite, the sense of ownership, the sleeplessness about, a million different aspects that you need to think about for a startup. So
Ananth, picking on what Kirthiga said, right? You worked with McKinsey for 15, and I'm sure you had good exit from Myntra.
Yep.
Having that safety net, did that help you take more risks? And I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs here don't have that kind of a safety net, right? They might not have, I mean, as you said, having a partner, supporting partner is very, very important, right? What is the mindset a founder has to have when you don't have that kind of a safety net?
I think the first thing, it's a great question, but I think the first thing, a little bit to what Kirthiga said, is you have to be very excited about a problem. You have to be very, very excited about solving a big problem, right? I think if that happens, your tolerance for safety goes up and down with your level of excitement for the problem you're going to solve. I just want to make sure that I make that point because yes, safety nets help. But there is no safety net eventually, right? I mean, I think it is important to actually be very, very excited about a big problem that you're going to solve. I think that's number one as an entrepreneur. We are all products of our personal experiences. If I look back on my earlier self and say, would I have started up when I was 22? I think the answer would have been much different, and I think it would have been much harder. I do think having done McKinsey and Myntra, it became much easier to invest into a MedLife and buy some part of MedLife and then say I'll join as the co-founder. It just became much easier because it was a easier financial, you're not worrying about your next meal or whether your kids go to college, right? You're at a certain later stage in life. So that for me helped, right? And I think it was for me a slow progression, right? So I didn't jump into entrepreneurship. I felt like a founder in Myntra because I thought of myself as owning Myntra, right? And I think the mindset's different from risk taking. But in MedLife, I put in money, and I think once you put in money and lose money is when you realize what it really means.
Absolutely.
And I think that changes. And therefore, I think for me, it was much easier to do this a little later when there was financial security. But I think the biggest thing driving it, I mean, I thought long and hard before starting Mensa on whether I should be doing something else. But the reason I did it is I got excited about building global consumer brands from India, right? And I think that was the exciting part.
But what is the mindset when you're thinking about that big problem? What is that one particular attribute you would define that, right? You're getting excited of that one big problem.
So for me, actually, it's very simple. I'll give you the Mensa example. I feel like in the 90s and 2000, IT services companies went global, right? 2000, 2010, 2020, lots of SaaS that happened. We haven't built global consumer brands from India. Now, there is no problem with distribution. There is no problem with understanding consumer data because of great platforms that have been built.
Right.
Therefore, there's a unique opportunity to say, can I build a Unilever or can I build a Procter & Gamble from India but built really for the world? And that felt very exciting. It felt like you could actually build some really interesting and exciting brands. And that's what gets the juices going, right? So that's what got me excited. So it has to be big and it has to be right at the moment of time. I think, for example, if global distribution platforms didn't exist, if Facebooks and Instagrams didn't exist, you couldn't build global brands from India.
Absolutely.
Now was the right time. So you need an intersection of an idea that's big and a timing that's right. Both are important.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kirthiga, I mean, I think you have an answer.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to say something. You please do, but I also want you to think, in my view, there are startups or entrepreneurs pre-COVID, right, and post-COVID. The dynamics in which an entrepreneur thinks or used to think before COVID is completely different than how an entrepreneur thinks today. So what's your experience and has that changed in your own personal life post-COVID? Is virtualness a post or a pre-COVID baby?
No, virtualness is a post-COVID company. And I would say on the question of entrepreneurship is a calling, right?
Yeah.
At some level, if you logically compute things, the odds are against an entrepreneur. Like for every success story that you see on stage, there are many, many failed ones. And for all of the glamour that you might see of people on stage, there's a lot of hard work and sacrifices that you have to be ready for. So entrepreneurship is a calling, and it's perfectly fine to have incredible jobs at incredible companies. So it's sometimes entrepreneurship is almost more glamorized than it needs to be. But we are about putting entrepreneurs first. If you do decide to be an entrepreneur, know that you have an incredibly supportive community, whether it's people who went before you, whether it's the community that TiE brings together, and make use of every possible advantage for you to be successful. We are a post-COVID company. how did COVID change things for me? One, of course, the fact that you could do a lot of things without needing to travel goes without saying. And we are a fully remote hybrid first team. Would not have happened if not for COVID. I just would not have had that mindset. I would also say, Murli, that my company, Verix, Virtualness, sees a lot of tailwinds because of being a hybrid first company, because of wanting to change how recognition is being done, certification is being done. So from a business perspective, we see a lot of tailwinds. I think the biggest thing for me around COVID is to make sure that we are living a life of no regrets. And, one, giving more grace both to myself as well as to others, and knowing that life and things can change any moment. So making sure we are making the most of every moment.
No, that's a great insight, Kirthiga. So, Ananth, picking on what Kirthiga said. I mean, the one word which comes to my mind is resilience, right? Do you think that post-COVID, the factor of resilience is increased in the entrepreneurs, and has that changed? What do you think about that particular attribute for the entrepreneurs?
Just on the COVID point, we were born, Mensa was born in April, May 2021, right in the middle of COVID. So it was quite the experience because the first brand that we bought, we did virtually, which is quite interesting. And for us as well, there's been a flip because I think the online shopping and consumer behavior changed sort of fundamentally. But coming back to resilience, I think what Kirthiga said, I think entrepreneurship is about resilience. For anybody who tells you life is a straight line and you go from one success to another success to another success, that's absolutely not true. We only talk about the things that have actually worked. We seldom talk about things that haven't worked. So I left Myntra right after the Walmart sale happened. This was 2018, and decided to put whatever exit I had to buy into MedLife, which is an e-pharmacy. At that time, funding was at an all-time high. Everybody thought it would be easy to get money. I had gone through 3 very successful fundraise cycles, not as the entrepreneur, but as one of the largest businesses inside Flipkart. So, you feel very good and said, no problem. And then MedLife, I was unable to raise money for the entire 2 years, right? I think we were a good business. I think e-pharmacy, we actually, by the way, before quick commerce, started to do 10-minute deliveries, which I thought was very interesting, but we couldn't raise money. It's quite humbling. And I think eventually, by the way, we survived on exhaust fumes and no money. We had to let go of a lot of people, which is very, very, very hard to do because everybody's working very hard. And we managed an exit mostly out of luck because COVID happened and COVID created a tailwind for e-pharmacy as a business, and then we were able to sell it to Pharmacy. So I think it taught me 2 things. First, I think as a startup, survive. Just survive long enough and you will become a success. If you don't survive, you're gone. So the key is just keep at it and don't die. I mean, it just seems very basic, but if you don't die and you keep doing what you're doing, eventually success, you give enough chances for luck to come your way.
And then luck plays an important role.
Luck plays an important role, right?
So Kirthiga, on that matter, what is the most important aspect in your life where the resilience played a role in your transition or you become an entrepreneur, any such, and also probably for all the women entrepreneurs, maybe from a woman perspective, anything which you would want to?
Yeah, so resilience and persistence, I would say, are just 2 important attributes of success in any of these different roles, and certainly as an entrepreneur. In the investing side, SoftBank Vision Fund, even with SoftBank Vision Fund, like if you have a hot deal, you actually have to compete really hard to get into an investment because everybody wants to invest. There's a certain amount of dollars that they would take. It's a good problem to have for any entrepreneur, but it took me like real hard persistence to get into the deals that I wanted. One example I would give you is IonQ. It was the first quantum computing investment by SoftBank, and I led that investment for them. Today it's trading at $7 billion. But it was a very oversubscribed round. And going back to your question of also a woman, we have very few women in investing, And the reason that I made that success happen was because there was another fellow board member from another company who really advocated hard for me. So this was a male ally who said, you know, you should have Kirthiga on a cap table. She will be a game changer for you. By the way, I still also remember on your question of being a woman and investing, it was a really sought after round. I remember talking to the CEO. It was International Engineers Day, and he had posted about women engineers. And I was making the case why he should take money from SoftBank. And I happened to say, and you know, congratulations on International Women's Day. I said, oh, by the way, I'm just curious, how many women do you have on the other side that you're having this conversation with? And there was a pause on his hand, because there wasn't a single woman investor who he was talking to in that set of people. I said, you know, you really should think of more diversity in your cap table. And I don't know whether that made a difference or not, but you know, also take advantage of the diversity stats whenever you can and help drive to the success that you want.
With your permission, probably maybe we'll take a question or two, Chinmay. Anyone wants a question? Ram from Manchester, President for TiE.
Just one question, Murli sir, if you don't mind, because we are badly running out of time.
I had until 5:30. Okay. Your thing is not working.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me? Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, good evening everybody. I'm Ram Shankar. I'm the president at TiE chapter in Manchester in the United Kingdom.
Woohoo!
Right, I've got a very simple basic question. Lots of established entrepreneurs on the stage and off the stage, but the aspiring ones. How or when do you know when is the right time to take the plunge into becoming an entrepreneur? That's it. That's the question.
Want to go first?
Oh, sure. You know, I've been asked this question about various career transitions. How did you know it was the right time to leave Facebook? How did you know it was the right time to leave SoftBank, right? And for me, it's actually a very simple algorithm. It is about listening to myself. When I wake up with a particular thought more often than not, I know that it's time for me to look deeper. So at Facebook, you know, I felt that I wasn't learning as much as I was earlier. And by the way, I also heard the stat talking of children that it was a Facebook conference where someone said, augmented reality, virtual reality. In the United States, 95% of your FaceTime with your child is done by the time they leave to go to college, and hence you need augmented reality, virtual reality. My heart dropped at the first part of that statement because I had 2 more years for my child to go to college, and every day I was waking up to that stat that said, oh my God, I have 1 day less, 1 day less. So that, when that happened consistently, I said, I actually took an all life, no work break, took 3 months to just spend time with my kids, something that I really encourage for like established executives. My HR person said, don't do this, get another job, then leave, otherwise you're losing your negotiating advantage. I said, I don't think I'm losing my career high, but I much rather regret looking back and losing a career high than not spending time with my kids. So I went and I took that break. So that's one. Same thing with SoftBank. As I was just waking up, thinking about entrepreneurship, being around entrepreneurs, and seeing what was happening with AI and blockchain, and feeling that I had it in me to, by the way, talking of stats, I heard that 4% of founders in deep tech are female, and I was waking up to that, if not me, who, if not now when, jumped into entrepreneurship.
What about you, Ananth? 30 seconds will do.
Yeah, so I think there's heart and head. For me, I think the plunge was more heart than head. I just sort of felt that this was an opportunity. So the way I think about heart, the decision is very simple. Would you regret not doing this if you look back 20, 25 years from now? And for me, when I decided to start Mensa, it was that, right? I felt like I would have regretted this lost opportunity, so I said I would do it. The head part of it, I think, is making sure entrepreneurship is a lonely journey with low probability of success, is to make sure that you have backup so that your core life doesn't change or, you know, whatever else. So that was the head part of it. But the heart part of it for me was not regretting not doing it.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Kirthiga. Thank you, Ananth. That's all the time we have. Hopefully, we'll do this next time soon.
Thank you.
For this
Thank you, Murli.
engaging conversation, Kirthiga ma'am, when you mentioned about diversity, it reminds me of Dr. Madhura Chatrapati. Unfortunately, we lost her recently. H Factor. She, along with Kiran Mazumdar ma'am and others, back in 70s, they started something called as Awake here in Karnataka, Association for Women Entrepreneurs. When the word entrepreneur was something that was not there in most people's vocabulary. She was an entrepreneur back in 70s and 80s.
Amazing.
In one of the conclave, someone very proudly said, "Here we have Madhura Chatrapati, a woman entrepreneur." And she said, "Sir, please introduce me as entrepreneur. They can see that I'm a woman."
Terrific, terrific. Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a huge round of applause for these eminent panelists, Mr. Ananth Narayan, Ms. Kirthiga Reddy, and Mr. Murali Bukhapatnam. Now let's go to the next segment, which is the founders.
All right, take a picture.
Get the picture.
How to galvanize people and resources effectively to scale your startup into a high-impact industry-led enterprise. And this conversation will be led by T.M. Veeraraghav, who is the executive editor at NDTV, a senior journalist with 25 years of work experience. He has held senior editorial positions in NDTV, The Hindu, CNN, News 18, and many other organizations. Currently, he is the executive director of NDTV, where he covers a wide range of subjects like socio, political, and cultural issues to reporting on business, tech, and foreign